Hello, my name is Brianne Friaro, and I am your host for FAU News. Today's topic will be a little bit of a heavy one. We are talking about war. As college students, we do have a duty not just to ourselves, but to the people around us, because the world that we are looking to create, we need to be able to know what is going on, not just in our immediate surroundings, but on a global level. The Geneva Academy monitors over 110 active conflicts around the world, but to put that into perspective for you, there are 195 countries or sovereign nations in the entire world. In North Africa and the Middle East, there are upwards of about 45 conflicts, with Syria being the most affected country in this region. The Syrian government is engaged in several non-international, meaning domestic armed conflicts, and an array of international conflicts. The domestic conflicts mainly consist of rebel groups who are opposing the current regime or current government. And it can be argued that the international conflicts between Syria and members of the US coalitions and Turkey are there to both intervene, investigate, and assist. A military occupation occurring in parts of northern Syria Turkey are finally a small part of Syria known as the Golan Heights is occupied by a new formidable superpower in the area, which is Israel. Moving on to Africa, the main continent, excluding the areas of northern Africa of Morocco, Libya, Egypt, and the Eastern Sahara. There are more than 35 armed conflicts, with the deadliest being in Mali, which has seen a steady decline in civilian well-being and on account of growing divisions within the military. Major government officials are being investigated and arrested by paramilitary groups and those of the radicalized state opposition. The countries such as Burkina Faso, Cameroon, Central African Republic, the Democratic Republic of the Congo, Ethiopia, Mozambique, Nigeria, Senegal, South Sudan, and Sudan are also in similar situations as Mali. Mali has several armed groups and paramilitary troops are fighting against government forces and even against each other, causing a rise in the amount of innocent civilian casualties. Western powers, as we know, historically often intervene and have been involved in mediating conflicts, mainly in Burkina Faso, Mali, Mozambique, and Nigeria, as well as Somalia. Moving on to Asia. The Asian theater is displaying around 19 non-international and international conflicts, or NCIA, as abbreviated by the Geneva Academy. These involve 19 armed groups spread across Afghanistan, India, Myanmar, Pakistan, and the Philippines. These, again, are just domestic conflicts. There are two international conflicts between India and Pakistan and India and China, respectively. The conflict between India and Pakistan has been going on for several years now. There has always been a little unrest in that area, simply because after the most recent Great War, meaning World War II, there was a little bit of a border dispute, as you may know. Most of the countries in across the Atlantic Ocean or across the Pacific Ocean, depending on where you're from, have had their borders redrawn to minimize the amount of future conflicts. But as we see now in today's world, that redrawing has not worked out for everybody. Pakistan and the Philippines are the most hostile, with armed conflicts occurring both domestically and internationally. With the Taliban invasion of Pakistan, aside from declaring domestic issues they are still having border issues with India regarding the area of Kashmir, which is historically a disputed area. It is the border between northeastern India and southwestern Pakistan. The Philippines, however, has to recover from decades of government instability. Currently, they are switching from a single person running to a parliamentary system. And with this switch, there has been serious setbacks, as you would expect in any country that changes from one government system to another. Historically, we can compare that to that of England in the late or mid to late 1500s with the English Civil War, the beheading of King Charles, and the assumption of the Lord Protector, who was Oliver Cromwell, after the English people decided that Oliver Cromwell was not a good leader and was essentially putting himself in a position to be a stronger and more, let's say, divisive dictator. The parliament was reformed and voted to reinstate the monarchy with Charles II, Charles I's son. Going back to present day, with the recent election in 2025, this year, the government has, it seems like they were coming up to a potential resolution to all of the issues that they were having. However, this transition is extremely hostile. With the most recent election, there was a big transition from the parliamentary system into the parliamentary system, and the power struggle has remained. Meanwhile, in the capital of the Philippines, Manila, is having an international dispute concerning Beijing in the southern China Sea. The conflicts in Europe number about 7. 4 of the 7 of the conflicts are between Russia and 3 and their current occupation of the Crimea, which has long been established to be, which is known to be the region of northeastern Ukraine. This is, again, as I said, after World War II, there were a lot of regions who got a little bit, there were a lot of countries that may have gotten a little bit more land, countries that may have separated. In the case of like Yugoslavia is now 3 different countries instead of just being one. Because of this, Russia now is claiming that they want the land in Crimea back. The European theater, we have seen historically, they like to dispute over land. That is their main issue, and that has been how it is for centuries and centuries. So there are a few changing names in Europe right now. South Ossetia and Abkhazia, which is formerly known as Georgia, are having a conflict, and Armenia is currently occupying parts of Azerbaijan. This could definitely be, or more likely, be caused by the Armenian genocide that happened around 70 years ago. In the broader sense of the European theater, as I said, conflicts that involve history or historically involve border issues, countries wanting land, thinking that they are more entitled to the land because historically their people have settled there. The most severe of which in today's day and age is between President Zelensky of the Ukraine and Vladimir Putin of Russia. The Ukrainian-Russian war for the past 3 years has been a very deadly and very devastating war, not only for the infrastructures of both countries, but for the civilian lives and military lives that have been lost in order to protect the goals of each of these countries, respectively. And the changing technologies in war have made war more deadly, not because there are more soldiers on the ground fighting. Instead of soldiers on the ground, we are having drone strikes. These drone strikes are essentially unmanned unmanned planes that are flown over regions of any country and either drop bombs or are bombs themselves, and they are remotely controlled by professionals, army professionals. The development of warfare technology has caused decline has caused some of the deadliest conflicts in human history. While past wars usually involved soldiers' boots on the ground, guerrilla warfare, there has been a decrease in soldiers' lives being lost. However, there has been a serious uptick in the deaths of the civilian population. Upwardly, um, as the international, on the international level, there are examples of this. There are other examples of drone strikes being extremely deadly. If we think about the Israel Gaza or Israel Palestine conflict, you can very clearly see that they utilize drone strikes constantly. And it's gotten to a point now where other countries are being involved in both of these conflicts. And Ukraine and Russia, surrounding countries such as Poland, have been targeted by Russia in order to gain land and devastate any countries around Ukraine that may be supporting them in their war effort. In the Israeli and Palestine or Gaza conflict, there are Israel, as I mentioned before, is targeting other countries in the area who may be helping the Palestinians or allowing refugees to enter their country. And there are also growing conflicts in other areas like Syria, as I mentioned before, where Israel is targeting them because they see that there is a serious conflict. And while dealing with their own war, they are also attempting to intervene in wars around them. Finally, the last region that we have to talk about is Latin America. And in Latin America, there are really 6 domestic conflicts that are going on, but they are split evenly between Mexico and Colombia with 3 each. The largest conflicts are present in Colombia, where conflicts are between gangs and drug cartels. This is the first time the Geneva Academy has classified these armed conflicts, unraveling annual organizations and criminal organizations as NCIAs, are so given the organization of cartels growing along with the intensity of the welfare and warfare. As young adults attending a university, we need to be able to understand the world that we are surrounded by. I very much implore you all to not only seek knowledge, but also seek understanding. Be able to put yourself out there and be very open-minded to the perspectives of the people around you. Because you cannot get anywhere or develop in any situation unless you are put in an uncomfortable situation. You must absolutely continue to seek knowledge. While ignorance may be blissful, being in the know encourages growth, not just within ourselves, but within our communities. As university students, we are in a safe space to have civil discourse. Most civil discourses historically, and I will continue to say historically because history has a tendency to repeat itself. Historically, universities have always been the center of civil discourse when it comes to global conflicts, local conflicts, and political opinions, and disagreements in political opinions. But at the same time, with these disagreements, we are able to open ourselves up to different perspectives and learn from the people around us. Do your own research. Investigate topics and global events you may be interested in. One day soon, our generation will be the ones to rule and manage this world. And we are not called Generation Z for nothing. We are the end of our alphabet. We need to progress. We need to set ourselves up for the alphas and the betas, which are really just our kids and our grandkids. Some great resources to look for to develop your knowledge and understanding of world events, world conflicts, domestic events, anything like that, would be the Geneva Academy, ACLED, or the Armed Conflict Location and Event Data website, the University of Oxford's Strategy, Statecraft, and Technology site, as well as reputable news sources such as BBC News, the New York Times, Associated Press, and Sky News. I beg you to please not limit yourself to news outlets that are only based in the United States. We can learn a lot from the news that comes from other countries. We are not the only ones on this earth. We need to be able to view other places and understand what's going on in the global theater to make sure whatever happens outside does not happen here. Do not limit yourself to anything. The world is our oyster, and we are the pearls. We need to be able to put ourselves out there and shine and gleam in every way that we can. I hope and pray that whoever is listening to this is aware and is open to having conversations with people they disagree with. Once again, I am your host of FAU News. My name is Bree Ferraro, and I am signing off.